7 o'clock. Okay, I'm going to call this meeting of the Public Works Committee to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Chair Ozon,
Here.
Vice Chair Hart, Member Chaplin. Here. Member Desart.
Here.
Member Tornashore. Member Zay.
Any we have a quorum? Okay. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay. All right. Next, I'm going to move to approve the minutes of the October 4th, 2022 meeting.
So moved.
It is a quorum. We have 4.
No,
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, you gotta make.
You gotta make me one.
Okay. I move to make Paula Deacon Garcia
Second.
a member of this committee.
I got more.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for pointing that out, Member Garcia. Okay, we now have a quorum, and I move for approval of the minutes of October 4th, 2022.
Chair Ozon. Chair Hart.
Yes.
Member Chaplin. Aye. Member Desart.
Aye.
Member Garcia.
Aye.
Okay, next we have budget transfers. A $45,000 budget transfer is necessary to cover the cost of overtime employment, overtime use for shift coverage due to shortage of staff, projects that need to complete during non-business hours. And we also have another budget transfer, $182,000 budget transfer needed to cover the cost of bulk chemicals for the power plant operating supplies and materials, fuel for backup generators, and maintenance supplies and facilities. I move for approval of these budget transfers. Okay. And all in favor?
Aye.
Actually, I'm sorry, I need to go back. I move to combine these two issues.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Second, okay. All in favor of combining?
Aye.
Okay, and all in favor of approving these two issues? Thank you. Member Garcia, please stop looking at me. I'm not on my game today, apparently, but we will get there. Okay. Okay, I next move for approval of consent items. I move to combine A, B, C, and D.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and I now move for approval of consent items A, B, C, and D. So
Second.
item A, Lee's food service, close the contract. S&I Solutions, close the contract. Gas Depot, contract close. And FM A&P Grease Trappers, contract closed. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, next I move to accept the payment of claims report for Public Works and Facilities Management.
Second.
Okay. And we can note that Mr. Zay has joined the meeting and Mr. Torrentore.
Sorry.
All right. Next, we have an intergovernmental agreement. I move for approval of FMR 042222, resolution intergovernmental agreement between the County of DuPage and the Illinois Workers' Compensation Commission for the lease of space at the JTK Administration Building for facilities management for a total sum of $83,400 and no cents for a 48-month period between December 1st, 2022 and November 30th, 2026. I have a second. I need a roll call.
Chair Ozon.
Yes.
Member Chaplin.
Aye.
Member Desart.
Aye.
Member Tornashore.
Aye.
Member Zay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next I move for approval of a bid award, FMP 028822. Recommendation for the approval of a contract to S&I Solutions Incorporated to furnish and deliver de-icing solids, EcoSalt for facilities management grounds for the period November 1st, 2022 through November 31st, 2023 for a contract total amount not to exceed $96,320 per lowest responsible bid. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, Mr.
I had
Zay.
a question. I assume we go through transportation.
Absolutely. Everything, anything with the salt, the gas, everything, we coordinate or utilize those.
Good
Thank
job on
you.
this. Just see the report that it's going to be up, maybe more snowy. than-
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I will tell you that
Farmers Almanac?
I was in the Daily Herald.
I have
Oh,
heard,
Daily Herald, it's gotta be right.
That's right. That's right.
I have heard villages and municipalities are having trouble getting their salt deliveries right now.
Yep.
There's some serious concerns with supply chain
Yeah,
with
so
salt.
good.
We're fair to the Mississippi's lower than it's ever been. No barges are going on.
Yeah.
I know. It's so
Scary. Okay, we have salt. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. All right, next I move for approval of a grant, what are we doing here?
Yeah, grant proposals.
Grant proposal notification GPN 5822, assist with funding required for
Second.
construction of new water main providing reliable water source and fire protection for the Timber Lakes residential area. Timber Lakes Water Main Extension Project, $400,000. Have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And next we have a resolution. I move for approval of PWR 041822, acceptance of the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity Grant Management
Second.
Initiative, installation and a replacement of Utilities Grant Program Intergovernmental Agreement number 21203-306, Company 2000, Accounting Unit 2640, $400,000. And I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I move for approval of an amendment, FMP 0081A22 amendment issued to White Construction for the JOF annex expansion for the an accounting adjustment to move $5,400,000 from fiscal year 2023 to fiscal year 2022.
Second.
Second. Okay, any questions about this?
I do,
Okay,
and I know we've talked about this.
Member Desart.
Thank you. I know we've talked about this before, but this feels a lot like, remember Popeye's Wimpy? I'll page mark the number here today. That's what this reminds me of.
This is
So
actually,
we're borrowing money from 2023.
no. This is, if you remember, we went through the excess money in 2022, the 40 million in there, and one of the payments in there was 5.4 million. So we're actually prepaying this. So originally we were saying that we were going to pay for it in 23, but by doing this, we're utilizing the 22 money so that we can do it now. So this is moving, originally it was coded to 23, but because we had money available, we're able to handle the commitment now.
So we're using part of the $40 million surplus.
Yeah,
so
that
now
was-
now we're down to $35 million in surplus.
Yes, correct. That was what was presented at special call
Yes,
finance.
and we talked about it a little bit because by paying some of these things forward,
Yeah.
that takes pressure off the general fund, so we can pay for those salaries.
Yeah, there's no, this isn't a change order. This isn't anything. We're not changing anything. We're simply able to take care of our commitments in the future years now. So this is being more fiscally responsible.
Mr. Zay.
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, there's really no information on this. I mean, it just says this, but again, this just seems like a shell game. I agree with Member Desart. I mean, we can always roll that money over into next year. I mean, if we don't spend it, we don't spend it. Why are we prepaying it? I mean, what kind of agreement are we getting?
No.
Are there no change orders?
We are not prepaying white on this at all. This is simply going in to the infrastructure fund. There's no prepaying the contractor, no prepaying anything on this. This is simply putting it in the right fiscal year. So this is utilizing it. So this is not prepaying anybody. We're keeping the money in our own accounts here. So, but because we can utilize it in 22, that's why that's why this is needed.
How much are we gonna utilize in the next month?
We will not utilize this 5.4
That should
million.
be from fiscal 2022 to 2023 here.
The infrastructure, but the difference is, so in the 22 budget, we had the 40 million surplus. And so the utilization, if we don't utilize that, yes, it would just go into the contingency fund we have, into reserves. So there's, like I said, there's no downside for us because we know we have the $5.4 million commitment out there. And we are simply putting in an infrastructure fund that rolls over. That's a commitment. I mean, just like we're handling the other commitments, the 3 million infrastructure and facilities, we have, I think, the vehicle replacement fund, those are all what we're funding out of the 40 million. So this is, we are not prepaying. This has nothing to do with giving White or the contractor more money. This is simply utilizing the money we have available now.
How many projects does White have right now?
Going as we speak. I'm trying to think, this is, I mean, keep in mind, this covered the annex expansion as well as the bond court all under one contract. I think this might be their only open contract, but I can get back to you on that one.
It just seems like, I mean, there's other large contractors out there. It seems like they've done
Absolutely.
everything on the county complex for the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, they did the DuPage, right? I mean, are they doing the animal?
Animals, they have an expert out. They're not doing animal services expansion. I will get back to you about what all the contracts they've had though.
Okay, thank you.
Could you send it to all of us?
Absolutely.
During the special call finance meeting when we discussed the $40 million surplus, I don't recall us, we talked about a lot of projects and a lot of things that this money could be used for. But did we firmly say, go ahead with those?
That was the direction from the special call finance.
Maybe Jeff can explain it, but we're moving the money. From what I understand, we're moving the money, some of these future obligations or projects that we had, we're taking the surplus and putting it in the infrastructure fund so that we have that money set aside, takes pressure off our general fund, which allows the general fund to then fund our regular day-to-day operations. Is that a correct explanation?
We talked about tort liability funding that. I think we're funding that 2.5 million, the vehicle replacement, 3.25 million. I don't have it in front of me, but that was in that special call finance we went through. And there's still, even after all those obligations, there's still about 10 million available that will, we're gonna figure out how to handle the 10 million.
From the surplus.
This
From
is
the surplus,
This is
oh.
not ARPA, this is just our
Right.
surplus,
But
right?
when 2022 ends, you're gonna have to transfer this money into 2023, right?
Infrastructure rolls over. Infrastructure funds roll over.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm sorry. At the next finance committee meeting, you're gonna see a series of resolutions for transfers into the infrastructure fund and, a number of other budget-related items. So this is one that we had planned for quite a while. We're obviously taking surplus money from 22, transferring into the infrastructure fund, a capital projects fund. And that money will just sit there until it's approved and then drawn upon.
Right.
So it's not an expense. And we'll go through more of it in detail at the next finance committee meeting, but this is one of several that we had anticipated doing.
Member Director.
And the other reason, it gives you more wiggle room in 2023, because you're not gonna have that $5 million.
Without-
Or you're gonna have that gap. to be able to
That's
use.
correct. That's correct.
So
We
that's-
know we have
that's
an
the-
obligation.
That's the reason we're doing
Yeah,
it.
we know we have an obligation. The project's underway and we know the obligation. This is satisfying 100% that obligation funding an infrastructure fund.
Member
If I
Chapman.
may, thank you. And by doing this, it's not just gonna take pressure off the general fund for 2023, but 2024, am I correct on this?
Yes.
Up to future years, because some of these projects were 2, maybe 3 years out, if I'm correct, if I'm remembering.
Right.
So we're putting it in that infrastructure fund, kind of like a rainy day or savings account for these projects, which is really, actually, it is very fiscally responsible. We have the money, we're setting it aside. We're not, we don't do any bond issues. We're taking care of good projects that needed to be done with our surplus, so.
Okay, any other questions?
So what is that surplus down to?
When you talk about surplus for 22 or
The
the,
40 million.
well, this is, I think we've utilized, what have we used so far? We've done one other resolution, I thought. But after all of the items we talked about, there's about 10 million left in there.
So that we'll have more
Always
of
from the 40.
an explanation at the next finance committee meeting. You'll see, like I was saying, we'll see a series of resolutions and show how we move that money.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
And keep in
I
mind
mean, it
too,
should just be a one-page document, right?
Well, there's a series of resolutions for vehicle replacements toward this project and
3 million in facilities management,
facilities
the
management.
stormwater project. So there's a number of them, clean and lean program. Those were all the ones. So all of those over the next probably 4 weeks, we'll be bringing resolutions through finance and board for all of those.
So if anybody's had second thoughts, they can vote against it.
Yeah, and
Like the 10 million for the,
We're not bringing that one through.
okay. well, I'm
We're
just
not
saying.
bringing that one.
Garage, the
Yeah,
parking
no,
garage.
That one's not coming through. There wasn't consensus on that one.
We can send out the PowerPoint that we did a month ago or so on how to utilize this 40 million.
That would be good.
Well, I remember seeing the PowerPoint, but I don't remember agreeing to all these things and formally voting on these things.
it wasn't a formal vote, it was a consensus, if I may.
Member Chapman.
So also, what was I gonna say? So we still have our reserves. We have not
100
touched
million.
100 million in our reserves. This is the 40 million surplus that we
I
had in.
understand that.
And then we still have our ARPA allocation too. So this is not ARPA, this is different. So this is our 40 million that we have extra in revenue this year, our
So
surplus.
could I ask this, if we, when these projects come up on the agendas, finance agenda or transportation agenda or whatever, you know how we have a, parentheses ARPA?
Mhm.
Let's do parentheses surplus. So
And
we
I'll
know
tell you,
we're very, very clear.
all of
that these are.
all of
surplus
these
dollars.
will come up either next week or the first meeting in November at Finance and Board, because they have to be approved before the county board approves the 23 budget.
Right.
Because all of these impact the 23 budget, and if they're not approved, then a 23 budget has to be modified.
I'm just saying, would you
Absolutely,
identify that?
without
as
a doubt,
surplus?
without a doubt, we can do that. What I will also say, and that was a discussion there at Finance, while all of these are put in tort liability, vehicle replacement, the different funds, that doesn't mean that it's off limits. If there's an emergency that happens, a better use in 23, a lot of this money will still be sitting there, like Member Chaplin said, for 23, 24, and 25. You can pull that back as a board if there's a more important emergency that does pop up. So it's not like this 5.4 million won't be spent till probably the end of 23. I mean, this is a project that's ongoing. You can't really stop this one, but some of the other ones, the tort liability, the vehicle replacement, the board can so choose to pull that back at any time. Even if you do the budget transfer in the next either 2 weeks or 1 week or 3 weeks.
Right. But I mean, just having this discussion, I think is important. So thank you for allowing it, Chair Ozog. But, we're talking about a lot of issues facing the public, and we've got $40 million in surplus. And I remember asking in transportation, asking Chris Snyder if, what would it look like if we reduced or eliminated the gas tax for a short while until we get over this gas crisis. And he said, well, we've got a lot of projects in the works right now, and that would, blow up all those projects. But if we did something creative, like reduce the gas tax in DuPage County and put some of the surplus money toward those road projects that are already planned, what would that look like?
And part of it too, I think the board decided to put 2 million toward transportation of that
Right.
40 million.
Right.
So it was very much those have been discussions. I mean, I guess that's up to transportation and the board, whether you guys want to do the gas tax at that point.
Right, and we still have reserve money, 10 million that we haven't allocated yet. So, but,
I know, but we have allocated 75% of that
oh, yeah,
bonus that we got from the.
the surplus, right,
Right.
the surplus. So, right, and that's something that we could talk with Chris Schneider, see what the impact is reducing that gas tax. But, we just thought that taking this surplus and putting it in like savings accounts, like the infrastructure fund, the vehicle fund, we don't have to do anything with our tax increases for that. We don't have to raise taxes, bond issuance.
No, I
and things like
understand. I
that.
understand some of these conversations
you're
happen in
looking for-
private with Jeff and Nick.
No, we had, go
They're
back and
for
watch our
finance.
go back and watch the last finance meeting. You were there. We discussed all this. We talked about
It was a
how it's
robust
saving,
discussion.
there was
yeah.
a
It was.
very robust discussion. We talked about how it's taking pressure off future budgets that allows us then to fund normal things in our general fund without having to pull from higher taxes or our reserves.
Right.
So, right. So, yeah, talk with Chris. It's a great conversation to have. I totally think we should discuss it, transportation,
Definitely.
and see if we can allocate some of that, if the board so chooses. Give our taxpayers a little relief at the gas pump and use some of that surplus to fund those projects.
Maybe we
Yeah.
could get some scenarios, 2%, 2-cent or 3-cent reduction.
I'm just really conservative and I don't want to blow all of our money. We've already spent 70%.
We have a
That's my concern.
My only-
Ooh, it's all
My
good.
only thing I would say is the vast majority
Still
of,
be there.
for the 40 million that was decided is not blowing it on projects.
Right.
It's blowing it on existing obligations that are already out there. And that was kind of the whole thing was these are obligations the county has. Tort liability was based upon a specific issue. The vehicle replacement, specific issues going. So, I mean, there wasn't, the only thing that was really out there was the sheriff facility, and there wasn't consensus on that one. So that's why you have the 10 million.
I'm just saying, guys, that, Nick was just talking about a new COVID variant in Singapore that's highly contagious and apparently immune to our current vaccinations. My point is that I don't want to blow all of our money because we don't know what's ahead,
Understood.
whether it's gas tax or COVID litigation or whatever.
And let's carry on these discussions with transportation in the finance meeting, because I think there's certainly discussions we need to have. But for right now, have good discussion and to be continued, I think. So at this point, I'd like to move for acceptance of action item A. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any against? Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to move on to informational. Nick, you're going to present about the fairgrounds lease.
Yes. Nothing in the packet, no decisions to be made today. I just wanted to inform the committee where we're at, what's happening, and maybe get some direction from the committee how to proceed. The current lease for the fairgrounds, if you remember, we did a 3-year extension, expires September 30th of 2023. Staff, state's attorney, and the Fair Association, we've been working very hard to get a new lease negotiated. We have all the points agreed upon from a staff to staff perspective, except for one, and we're confident that within this week, we'll probably get that lined out. Just it's a matter of getting wording lined out. So we could be early, as early as the next Public Works meeting, we could theoretically bring something through this committee. I will give you some quick high points of where we're at. And obviously, once we get the final version, I will send it out to this committee as quickly as we get it lined out. Current value, lease value, $1 a year, where we're at. We have revised the boundary agreements because the current one has our 509 parking deck in it. So we've got the ability, we've got knockout provisions in there in case if we need the land. We can do campus stormwater anytime. Prohibited uses, obviously we've eliminated the sale of live animals, use of live animals, except the fair 4-H rescue groups. So the Farm Bureau, hours of operation, really all the things you've seen before. Probably the biggest one that we have the current lease going through 2040, but we will only do it, we will have 24-month knockout terms. So at any time, the county or the fairgrounds can cancel the lease with 24 months notice. The longer lease is important to them because they get state funding and that requires a longer lease, but the 24-month termination clause with no cause whatsoever, I think that gives max flexibility. So those, and we'll have a much broader discussion. I know that our auditor has done a fairly in-depth analysis on their financials. He has joined us today. I don't know, Bill, if you wanted to give a quick summary of what you found.
As for Mr. the table here.
Please.
Okay. So I sent 2 lengthy letters to.
I heard that,
to
Mr.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I sent 2 lengthy letters to both of you, to all of you. Both letters I sat down and reviewed line by line with Jim and Norma before I sent them out. They say the letters accurately describe their financial status from their point of view. I went line by line with Nick and Jim over the letters before I sent them out. Bottom line, it looks like the Fair Association emerged from the COVID pandemic stronger than it was when the pandemic began. My understanding is that the lease extension was to bridge the COVID crisis. And that's why we're just coming back to you now to extend the lease. Government aid played a big part in this, but not the only part. The Fair Association is now making money on things like RIPFest, and the county fair has become profitable. One of the recommendations is that they strengthen their cost accounting. Right now, their financial records don't properly allocate all the costs, all the different events. When it was back before COVID, they ran the fair and they ran everything else. Everything was in one of 2 buckets. Now, if they're going to have a wide variety of events, they need to properly do the cost accounting. That's necessary because the Fair Association does a great many events at either no cost or reduced cost. There's several dozen of them, and I think you've got the lists. And it was my recommendation that they account for what the fixed overhead would be for all the various free events that they do. I think the ATF or the bomb squad, somebody's having a training session at no charge, like right now. So then the other point I want to make both last year and this year is that the buildings, the site improvements, and the equipment all have very significant value, but without an appraisal, we can only get a very rough approximation. That value, though, really only exists if it's being used for its current use. You can't sell the buildings. So if they stop holding events, that value will evaporate. So that's really based on that use. The greatest strategic threat, this is the most important thing facing the Fair Association, is succession planning. Who takes over when Jim and Norma retire? I first talked to Jim about this in the spring of 21. I talked to him again in spring of 22. I talked to him again last week at great length. They say they understand that they won't be here 15, 20 years out. And if it's going to continue, they need to hand it off to a new team. And it's my recommendation that the board, not that the board, develop a plan to carry that over. That's also perhaps the most important reason, in my opinion, why the lease needs a kickout clause, a way to cancel it. That if they don't put a new team in that can run it, the county needs to take the property back. If they put in a new team that can run it, and the county board is happy with how the new team is running it, then you can keep going. Jim McGuire told me, he said that he is completely content with the cancellation clause. He understands completely that if he can't hand it off to a new team, the county has to go a different direction. So I kind of went through everything really quickly. If anybody has any questions about my letter, I'd be happy to answer them.
So from our standpoint, like I said, we will have a lease, a final version of a staff-to-staff lease with the state's attorney's approval within probably the end of this week. We can send it around. I was wondering what the will of the Public Works Committee is with you know, moving it forward, not moving it forward, what you would like to do. I will say that they cannot book anything after 9/30 of 23 because they don't have a legal lease. So they are interested in moving it forward as quickly as possible. But I wanted to see what the will of the committee would be.
And I'd like to express my opinion. I believe that we need to discuss this lease after the new board takes over. I think we're too close to the election, 3 weeks from today. And this is a decision about a large piece of our property. So my inclination is to wait until December. And I think we still have almost a full year to discuss the lease terms, and they're close enough to be ready to go. So my
It's only a month more, so I don't.
my position right now is that we would withhold this and have it for the next board. Member Desart.
Can I just make a suggestion as you're drawing up the lease? Last week in legislative committee, we voted to ask our legislators to lobby for a ban of the sale of assault weapons and large capacity magazines. And that's just, we're not a legislative body, we can't make that law, but we could put into the lease. I know there are gun shows at the fair.
We can
At the
definitely,
fairgrounds.
I think
I'd
that
like to put in, I don't know if those gun shows, I've never attended, but if they sell assault weapons, what?
No, you're fine. I totally agree. When you said I've never been to the gun show.
And high capacity magazines, if we
I-
could put that in the lease. that would ban them
will
on
absolutely explore. I'm not sure if they do either.
I don't think so. I think it's historic.
I think it's historic weapons, but we could definitely, I think that's an easy ask.
Okay, Member Torrentoro.
Jim, did you say that the buildings, I'm sorry, that the buildings were part of their assets?
I believe they're leasehold improvements. Now, if the lease expires, all the assets revert back to the county,
Well, the county owns the land.
right?
The building's on the land. The building can't be separated from the land, so the building is ours. So how they're using that as an asset, I don't understand. So I mean, legally, that's,
It's a leasehold mortgage is what they have.
yeah,
So
but the building isn't, I mean, it's not theirs to declare an asset, so I understand they're using it, but if the lease were to expire, they walk away, they don't get to take the building with them.
Yes.
Like they could if it were a chair. So that's question one. And then the other, I assume they're a corporation or an LLC of some
Oh,
kind.
not for profit.
They're not for profit.
Right.
So their succession plan would presumably be in their operating agreement or their bylaws, I would presume, because whether Jim McGuire or Norma leave, die, or otherwise walk away, the lease doesn't expire. The lease isn't with them. It's
Correct. The
with-
lease is
with
with
the
the Fair
organization.
Association.
So while it's important to know who's running the show, I think we ought to maybe take a look at their bylaws, if there's a succession plan. And parenthetically, I've pretty much done a 180 over the last couple of years on the fairgrounds and the people, because what they did during COVID was incredible.
It was,
We wouldn't have been able to do what we did without them.
they were. a
And
huge
they
part.
were there. I mean, through, every
Huge
time the health
benefit.
department asked them for something, they were there. And so
Elections, everything.
taking everything into consideration, I mean, I think that they're deserving of our consideration, as long as we're not, giving away the store. But I'm a little bit concerned about how they're allocating their
Just
net worth.
Very quickly, the succession plan recommendation is made to the board. It's the Fair Association board that'll provide continuity as they change staff.
Right,
Right.
Okay.
but somebody's
We are
gotta be
about
there
to
to
lose
do
our
the
quorum.
That's right.
If I could. just
Mr.
one-
Zag, real quick.
I think it's great. We should put this off, but there needs to be a long-term solution here. We have a grandstand that's not usable. We have buildings there that have been falling apart. I mean, we either got to step up and do something and get some down the road. Hey, this is what needs to be done. We're going to be replacing X, Y, and Z. And the animal thing. A lot of people came up and said they couldn't do the animals at the fair because of the county board. So that has to be figured out on what can and can't be done there. Because the fair this year was down. I mean, it was down. But again, we have a grandstand there that they can't use. It's falling apart. They can't do the derby anymore. There's lots of other things.
Facilities attention needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, we need to figure that out.
Yeah, the grandstand is nothing but a demolition. You
Member
gotta
Chapman.
demolish the grandstand.
She has to
Never
leave.
But I mean, I think that's something we can talk down the line
Yeah.
about long term. Because the way it is now, we just can't have it going, because at some point the wind's gonna blow and half these buildings are gonna fall down.
Correct.
I mean, so we have to make it either an investment in the future or do something on this, help them get some grant money in the future to build some buildings. I mean, make it
I
a
think I'd like
rec
to,
area or, an area where they can have concerts or something like that.
I'm
Something
gonna
that
move-
where it can be more usable than just the train show and the gun show and whatever that comes down the line.
I'm gonna move that we table this discussion and bring it back to our next public works meeting. 'Cause I
Could
think
we
don't
also
have-
table B, because I gotta go too?
And we also need to table.
B is
item.
very, very easy. And so
I think
it,
we've lost our quorum.
no, I think you still got four. Still got four.
Oh, yes, we do. Sorry. Okay.
So A, we can bring back up for more
We'll bring
discussion.
that up for more discussion.
B, just so everybody knows, and we can get more in depth. So this is an agreement, City of Darien, 20 years ago, a line was built. It had a clause in it that after 20 years, it can revert back to the county for ownership. Darien has executed that clause. I have the authority to sign it, but I wanted to bring it to this board or this committee to let you know. And following this committee, unless if there's any concerns, I will execute that agreement. It says that we will take ownership of the line. It's a positive thing for the county. It will allow expansion off of that line.
The line in good shape.
Yeah, line's in good shape.
Okay. Anything else? Any old business? Any new business? I move to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.